Elizabeth never expected a simple act of kindness to change her life. When she helped a stranger in need, she didn't know his son, Modric, was a billionaire, and that he would fall for her in ways she could never imagine. Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. If you're tuned in and ready to dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So, let's get started. Elizabeth hurried across the bustling streets of downtown Chicago, the late autumn wind tugging at her scarf. She had just finished her shift at the small community library where she worked, and she was on her way to pick up her father from the hospital after a minor surgery. Her mind raced with to-do lists, groceries, bills, homework with her younger brother. She didn't have the luxury of slowing down. As she rounded the corner, she spotted a man struggling to lift an elderly man out of a taxi. His father's cane had slipped, and the man looked frail, scared even. "Wait, let me help," Elizabeth called out, sprinting over. The man looked up at her, drenched by the mist from a passing street sweeper, frustration and embarrassment flashing across his handsome face. Thank you. He just lost his balance," he said, voice tight. Elizabeth didn't hesitate. She steadied the older man and guided him to a nearby bench. "It's okay. Don't worry. I've got him," she said, giving a reassuring smile. The son's gaze lingered on her. Dark brown eyes that were usually reserved for business meetings now shone with gratitude. And something else he didn't recognize yet. Curiosity, admiration, maybe even something deeper. "I'm Elizabeth," she said to the man on the bench, adjusting his scarf. "And you can call me Mr. Harris," he said nervously, brushing hair from his forehead. "And this is my father." Elizabeth smiled warmly. "Well, Mr. Harris, your dad is safe now. Let's get him settled inside, shall we?" The man standing behind the bench, his son, Modric, nodded silently. He didn't say much. He usually didn't. Billionaire CEOs didn't have time for street corner introductions, but something about this woman, her composure, her energy, it disarmed him. They walked the elderly man inside the hospital lobby, Elizabeth supporting him as he shuffled along. Modric followed silently, careful not to interfere. Every so often, he caught her looking back, offering a small, polite smile to reassure him it was okay. Once his father was settled in a wheelchair, Elizabeth turned to leave, expecting nothing more from this chance encounter. But Modric spoke before she could go. "Wait, Elizabeth, right?" His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Elizabeth paused, eyebrows raised. "Yes, do we know each other?" "No, not exactly." He hesitated, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I just wanted to thank you properly. You didn't have to help him." Elizabeth shrugged, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. "It's no trouble. My dad's had enough hospital visits for a lifetime. I couldn't ignore someone struggling." Modric's eyes softened, and he nodded, still holding back the urge to speak more. He had been raised in a world of luxury, business deals, and endless expectations. Yet this simple act of kindness from a complete stranger had affected him more than any boardroom victory ever could. Maybe I can buy you coffee sometime? As a thank you?" he asked, unsure if he should sound casual or sincere. Elizabeth's lips curved into a small, amused smile. "Sure, but I warn you, I'm picky about coffee." Modric chuckled softly. "Noted." She offered a final smile before leaving, the chilly wind brushing against her face. She didn't notice the man watching her with a mixture of intrigue and admiration as she disappeared into the crowd. Over the next few days, Modric found himself thinking about Elizabeth constantly. He watched from the corner of his office in the downtown Chicago tower, pretending to review reports while remembering the way she had handled his father, the warmth in her smile, the quiet strength she carried without realizing it. He didn't know why he felt so drawn to her. He was a billionaire. Power, money, influence, they had always defined him. Yet here was a woman who lived a life of purpose without wealth, without social climbing, without expectation, and somehow she had unsettled him completely. He decided, almost on instinct, to learn more about her. Not to intrude, not to overwhelm, but to see who she was beyond that brief encounter. Days later, he found himself at the small cafe where she often worked after her shifts, disguised in a simple jacket and jeans, his usual designer attire hidden beneath layers meant to keep him unnoticed. Elizabeth didn't recognize him at first, busy serving a group of students who laughed loudly at their corner table. She moved gracefully, balancing trays, refilling coffee cups, her hair tied loosely, face flushed from the work. Modric approached cautiously. "Hi, can I get a cappuccino, please?" Elizabeth looked up, squinting at the man. He seemed ordinary. She smiled politely. "Sure, coming right up." He watched her work, amazed at the efficiency, the kindness, the effortless way she managed everything without complaint. And he realized he didn't want to leave. Not yet. Not until he learned more about the woman who had stolen his attention in a single moment. As he left a few dollars on the counter and walked out, he knew one thing. He would find a way to see her again. Not as a billionaire, not as a powerful CEO, just as a man wanting to know the woman who had captured his heart without even trying. Elizabeth had no idea that the man who left the cafe smiling and mysterious was the same billionaire whose face she had seen in glossy magazine covers. And that very night, her father mentioned, casually, that the hospital had received a donation in their family's name, an amount large enough to ease medical bills for months. Who was behind it? And would Elizabeth ever find out that the stranger who had captivated her heart was not just a man, but a billionaire? If you were Elizabeth, would you go back to find the stranger who changed your day, or ignore it? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe to Philia Heart for the next chapter of Modric and Elizabeth's story. The next morning, Elizabeth woke with a nagging curiosity she couldn't shake. Her father had mentioned the anonymous donation again over breakfast, and though she appreciated the gesture, she felt uneasy. Someone was watching out for them. But why? She had never met anyone with such a level of concern before. Her mind drifted back to the man in the hospital lobby, the stranger who had helped her father. She remembered the warmth in his eyes, the kindness that had seemed so effortless. And now, knowing that someone had helped them financially, a suspicion crept into her mind. Could it be him? Meanwhile, across town, Modric woke early in his sleek penthouse apartment. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the polished marble floors. He poured himself a cup of coffee, but he wasn't thinking about the stock markets or board meetings. He was thinking about her. He remembered her hands steadying his father, the determination in her voice as she guided the older man, and the subtle way she smiled despite exhaustion. For the first time in years, he felt that the world outside his boardroom didn't matter. He had spent decades building his empire, but he realized that no amount of money could create the kind of impact Elizabeth had on him. She was real, unpretentious, and alive. And now, thanks to a few well-timed donations, he could ensure that her family's struggles didn't overshadow her life. Determined to see her again without revealing his true identity, Modric left his penthouse disguised in a simple hoodie and jeans, blending into the city streets. He followed a subtle pattern he had observed from a distance over the past few days, Elizabeth's routine. The library in the morning, the cafe in the afternoon, the bookstore in the early evening. By the time he reached the cafe, he had practiced his approach 100 times in his mind. The moment he stepped inside, he spotted her immediately. She was wiping down the counter, hair tied neatly, a faint crease between her brows as she focused on her work. "Hi," he said softly, approaching her cautiously. Elizabeth looked up, surprised. "Oh, hi. Can I help you?" He smiled, keeping his tone casual. "Actually, yes. I was hoping you could recommend a good coffee. Something strong, to get me through the day." She raised an eyebrow, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "Strong, huh? I think I can manage that." As she prepared the coffee, Modric watched her every movement. He noticed how she hummed quietly under her breath, how her eyes sparkled when she talked to customers, and how she seemed genuinely interested in everyone around her. He felt a tug in his chest, an ache he hadn't experienced in years. "Here you go," she said, sliding the cup across the counter. Their fingers brushed lightly, and he felt a jolt of electricity, an unexpected intensity that made his heartbeat skip. "Thanks," he said, taking a careful sip. The flavor was perfect, but the warmth in his chest wasn't from the coffee. They exchanged a few small words, polite, careful, ordinary. But beneath the surface, something unspoken lingered. A spark. Connection. Just as he was about to leave, a small boy ran past the cafe, tripping over the edge of the sidewalk. Instinctively, Elizabeth leaped forward to steady him, grabbing his hand before he fell. Modric watched her in awe. This was the woman he had been captivated by from the first moment. A woman who cared so deeply, even for strangers, that she instinctively offered help without thought for herself. He realized then that his admiration had shifted into something deeper. This wasn't just a fleeting fascination. He wanted to know everything about her. But before he could say anything, Elizabeth's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. Her eyes widened. "Oh no," she whispered. "Everything okay?" Modric asked immediately, stepping closer. I need to help my brother with something. I'll be right back," she said, rushing out, leaving the coffee half-drunk on the counter. Modric hesitated for a moment, then decided to follow her at a discreet distance. He couldn't explain why, but he needed to make sure she was safe, needed to be there for her, even if she didn't know it. He followed her to a small apartment building, watching her disappear inside. He noted the modesty of her home, the small details that revealed her life struggles and the resilience she carried with quiet pride. "I want to help her," he whispered to himself, "but not just financially. She deserves more than charity. She deserves someone who sees her for who she really is." Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his personal assistant. "Modric, the board is asking when you'll return. Everything is on hold without you." He glanced around, feeling torn. His life as a billionaire CEO demanded him, but his heart was here, in this small corner of Chicago, with a woman who had no idea who he really was. He typed back quickly, "Not now. Everything can wait." And as he slipped back into the shadows of the street, he made a silent promise. He would find a way to be part of her life, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as someone she could trust, someone who cared for her quietly, without expectations. But even as he walked away, he knew this wouldn't be easy. Keeping his identity secret while trying to build a connection with Elizabeth was a delicate balancing act. One wrong step, one careless word, and it could all unravel. Later that evening, Elizabeth returned home to find a small package on her doorstep. A simple note read, "For you, someone who makes the world brighter." Inside was a handmade candy apple, perfectly wrapped, with a tiny flower tucked into the ribbon. Her heart raced, but she didn't know who it was from. Was it the stranger who had helped her father, or someone else entirely? And why did it feel like her entire world had shifted with this one small gesture? Have you ever been noticed by someone who seemed ordinary at first, but turned out to be extraordinary? Comment Bilo? Elizabeth stared at the candy apple, turning it in her hands as though it might reveal the sender. The flower tucked into the ribbon was delicate, white, like the first snow of the season. Her chest tightened. Could it be him? The man who had saved her father, the man she'd barely exchanged words with? Somehow, her heart told her yes, even if her mind refused to leap ahead. She sat on her small couch, the soft hum of the radiator filling the room, and tried to focus on something else. Laundry, dinner, the pile of bills she still had to sort. Anything but thinking about the stranger, or the intense, unnerving warmth she felt whenever she remembered his eyes. Yet, every thought of him came with a sharp pang. Who was he really? Why did he help them? Was it charity? A fleeting whim? Or her stomach knotted? The beginnings of something else? Modric, on the other hand, struggled with his own restraint. He'd watched her from a distance that morning, seen her kindness, her laughter, her resilience. He had wanted to walk up, confess everything, to tell her that the man she thought a stranger was really a billionaire who had been quietly ensuring her family's stability. But he hadn't. He couldn't. He wasn't ready to strip away the life she knew. Not yet. He wanted her to like him first. For his heart, not his wealth. For her to see the man behind the empire. And so he waited, keeping a careful distance. Each smile, each glance, each interaction was a delicate balance. One wrong move, and she could retreat, frightened or overwhelmed. The following morning, Elizabeth headed to the local library, her routine providing a comforting structure. She tried to avoid thinking about the candy apple, the kindness, the man who had shaken her world with just one small gesture. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As she reached the steps of the library, she bumped into someone. "Whoa, sorry," she said quickly, looking up, and there he was, Modric, dressed casually, no suit, no watchful entourage. Just the man she remembered from the hospital and the park, eyes warm and attentive. "Elizabeth," he said softly, his voice calm but carrying a weight that made her chest flutter. She felt herself stiffen. "Hi." He studied her, careful not to crowd her space. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I," she said cautiously. Her mind raced. Was this a coincidence? Or was he following her? "I wasn't," he admitted with a small, self-conscious smile. "But I hope it's okay. I wanted to see how you were doing." Her heart thudded. Part of her wanted to smile, to welcome him, to be honest about the way she had thought of him constantly since their first meeting. But another part recoiled. He was a stranger. Kind one, yes. Someone who had saved her father, and perhaps her family's finances. But a stranger nonetheless. "I'm fine," she said quickly, keeping her tone light. "Really?" Modric nodded, a shadow of disappointment flickering across his face. "I'm glad." They moved inside, and for the next hour, Elizabeth tried to focus on the books she had come to study, keeping her attention rigidly fixed on the titles and dust jackets. But she couldn't. He was there, quietly observing her reactions, her expressions, her subtle shifts in posture. The corners of his lips lifted in response to her laughter at a particularly amusing note in a book. Her eyes softened when she discovered something she had been searching for weeks. Modric was captivated. Every subtle motion, every quiet sigh, every fleeting smile drew him in deeper. Yet, she remained cautious. She kept conversation minimal, polite, and carefully neutral. One question, one laugh, one small smile. He had to restrain himself from reaching across the table, from touching her hand, from confessing that he had been watching over her, that he had cared for her long before she knew it. "Thank you for the apple," Elizabeth finally said, her voice quiet. "It was thoughtful." Modric's pulse quickened. "I'm glad you liked it." "You didn't need to," she added, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her eyes. "I wanted to," he said simply. "That's the difference." Her heart ached, caught between gratitude and confusion. She wanted to trust him, wanted to believe his intentions were pure, yet the reality of her cautious nature made it impossible to surrender entirely. "I should get going," she said suddenly, standing up. He rose as well, not wanting her to leave without some acknowledgement of the growing tension between them. "Elizabeth," she paused, not meeting his gaze. "Yes, I hope we can talk again soon. Nothing more than talking. I promise." Her chest tightened at the sincerity, at the truth that resonated in his eyes. "Sure. I'd like that," she whispered, then hurried off, leaving him standing there, silently wishing she could see how much he was holding back. Later that evening, Modric returned to his apartment, restless. The day's interactions had left him both exhilarated and frustrated. He had glimpsed the beginnings of something remarkable with her, yet every step forward seemed met with resistance. He sank into his leather chair, staring at the skyline of New York City. Lights flickered across the buildings, but none of it mattered. His thoughts were all with Elizabeth, the woman who had no idea who he truly was, the woman who had captured his heart without even trying. He reached for his phone, almost tempted to send a message, to confess, to risk everything for honesty. But he didn't. Not yet. He had learned over the years that timing mattered. Patience mattered. and she deserved someone who wouldn't overwhelm her, someone who would earn her trust. And so he sat, thinking, waiting, and planning how to protect her, how to support her silently, and how to reveal himself without shattering the fragile connection forming between them. The next morning, Elizabeth found a small envelope slid under her door. Her name was written in elegant handwriting, and inside was a note. I see the strength you carry every day. You are remarkable, and I want you to know someone believes in you. M. Her pulse quickened. M? Could it be him? The mystery man who had helped her father? Or someone else entirely? Would you open a note from a secret admirer if you didn't know who they were? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to Philia Heart to follow Elizabeth and Modric's journey. Elizabeth held the small note in her hands, turning it over again and again. Who could it be? She had no idea, and yet, her heart stirred, inexplicably drawn toward the mystery. Later that day, she went to the hospital to check on her father, the man she had saved a week ago. Dr. Lawson, the patient's grateful father, greeted her with warmth. I'm so glad you came, he said, his eyes reflecting relief. Your kindness. It saved me more than you know. Elizabeth smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I just did what anyone would. But as she turned to leave, she saw him, Modric, standing near the hospital entrance, casually leaning against a column, watching her. His presence was unmistakable, though he hadn't approached her yet. She froze. For a moment, panic fluttered in her chest. Was he following her? Was he someone she should be wary of? But then, before she could step away, her father called out to him. Modric, over here. Her heart skipped. Her father waved him closer, unaware of the tension in Elizabeth's posture. Modric walked forward, a warm, reassuring smile on his face. Hello, Elizabeth. I hope I'm not intruding. You're fine, she said, her voice cautious. He nodded, sensing her hesitation. I just wanted to see how you were doing, and to thank you again for everything you did for your father. Elizabeth's chest tightened. Every word, every glance, drew her closer to him even as her mind insisted she remain cautious. Her father stepped aside, leaving them alone in the quiet hospital hallway. The fluorescent lights reflected softly on the polished floors, and for a moment, the world felt suspended. Elizabeth, Modric began, his voice soft. I need to be honest with you. I haven't been entirely truthful before. Her pulse quickened. What do you mean? He hesitated, then shook his head. Not here. It's not the right place. She bit her lip. Then, when? Tonight. There's a charity event downtown. I'll be there. I want to explain everything. Without interruptions. Without the world watching. Elizabeth wanted to protest, to remind him she didn't know him, that she didn't even know what he did, who he was. But there was something in his eyes that made her nod slowly. All right, she said quietly. I'll be there. That evening, the city's skyline glimmered through the windows of a grand, historic ballroom downtown. Candles flickered along the tables, casting golden light across the room. Elizabeth stepped inside, her heart hammering. She scanned the crowd, unsure of what to expect. And then she saw him, Modric, dressed elegantly, but still with that familiar warmth in his eyes. He noticed her immediately, and a small, private smile curved his lips. She hesitated, unsure if she was ready to confront the feelings that had been building. He approached slowly, stopping just a few feet away. Elizabeth, he said softly. Thank you for coming. You invited me, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes, because you deserve to know the truth, he replied. About me. About why I've been in your life. Her heart pounded. And what truth is that? Modric took a breath, then spoke carefully. I'm the son of the man you saved, and I've been drawn to you since that day. I couldn't stay away. I wanted to watch over you, to see you smile, without scaring you with my world. Elizabeth's eyes widened. You mean? Yes, he said, stepping closer, though not too close. respecting her space yet closing the emotional distance. I'm wealthy. I have a life most people only read about in magazines. But none of that matters. What matters is you. Your courage. Your kindness. Everything you are. Tears pricked at her eyes, and she swallowed hard. And you came here to tell me this? Yes, he whispered, because I can't hold it in any longer. I can't pretend I'm just a stranger. You deserve the truth, Elizabeth. And I want you to choose me if you can. She looked at him, the world around them fading into a blur. Her heart battled her mind. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself to fall for someone she barely knew? Someone with a life so different from hers? And yet, everything in her chest told her to take a leap, to believe in him, to see past the wealth, the status, and focus on the man she had glimpsed through fleeting moments. The one who had saved her father, the one who had silently supported her, the one whose eyes never lied. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Then don't, Modric replied softly. Just stay. Let me show you. Let me earn your trust. For the first time in weeks, Elizabeth allowed herself to believe that perhaps love could be simple, even amidst complexity. As they stood there, the first slow strains of a piano filled the room. Someone approached Elizabeth, a woman with a phone, holding a small envelope addressed to her in familiar handwriting. She opened it and gasped. I know who you are with tonight. Be careful. Not everyone is happy about this. Elizabeth's hand trembled. She looked at Modric, unsure if the warning was about her or about him. The ballroom suddenly felt too large, too crowded, and full of unknown threats. If someone you just met opened their heart to you, would you trust them immediately, or wait to see their true intentions? Comment Bilot? Elizabeth stood frozen in the grand ballroom, her hand still clutching the mysterious note. Her pulse raced, the words repeating in her mind. Not everyone is happy about this. She glanced at Modric, whose expression had shifted subtly from excitement to concern. He reached out, a comforting hand hovering near hers, though he didn't touch it yet. Elizabeth, what's wrong? He asked, voice low, steady, gentle. She hesitated. Should she tell him about the note? Should she keep it to herself? Her instinct told her to protect him, even though he had been nothing but kind. It's nothing, just a warning, she finally said, her voice trembling slightly. Modric frowned, his brows knitting together. A warning? About me? Elizabeth shook her head. I don't know. I just got it tonight. His jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. All right, we'll figure it out together. I promise. There was a moment of silence, broken only by the soft piano in the background. Elizabeth felt the weight of the evening pressing down on her. She needed clarity, not just about the note, but about the man in front of her. The billionaire who had quietly entered her life and captured her attention. I need to know more about you, Modric, she said finally. Who you really are. Why you were watching over me. Everything. Modric took a deep breath and nodded. I understand. And you deserve the truth. He led her to a quieter corner of the ballroom, away from the glittering tables and the music. He began to speak, slowly, carefully, as if each word carried the weight of his past. My family were wealthy, very wealthy, he began. But it's not just money. There's expectation, responsibility, pressure that most people can't imagine. I've spent my life being groomed to take over my father's empire, to live a life defined by rules, appearances, and success at all costs. But when I saw you, Elizabeth, something changed. I realized that life wasn't just about wealth or status. It was about people, about real connections, about kindness, about moments like the one where you saved my father. Elizabeth listened, her heart softening. She could see the vulnerability in his eyes, the weight of his confession. I wanted to approach you as myself, he continued. Not as Modric Lawson, heir to a billion-dollar company. Not as someone whose name carries influence or expectation. I wanted to be just a man who cares about another person without the distractions of money or fame. That's why I disguised myself, why I stayed in the background. I wanted to know you, Elizabeth. Not your opinion of my wealth, but your opinion of me." Elizabeth felt a tear prick the corner of her eye. She had never expected a billionaire to be so thoughtful, so patient, so careful. And yet here he was, exposing his heart, asking her to trust him completely. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. I didn't know someone like you could care so deeply without expecting anything in return." Modric smiled softly. "Caring doesn't require expectation. It requires attention, presence, and honesty. And I've never been able to be honest about my feelings until now. Not with anyone, not even my closest friends. But you made it easy, Elizabeth." Her chest tightened with a mixture of awe and vulnerability. She realized that her heart had been drawn to him not because of the fortune he carried, but because of the man he was beneath it. She hesitated, then asked, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that knowing the truth would make you step away. Afraid that my world, so different from yours, would scare you off. I wanted you to see me first, as a man, not as a headline." Elizabeth's hand found his, and she felt the warmth of his skin. The connection was undeniable. For a moment, the city, the ballroom, and the world outside faded. It was just them, sharing a truth that had taken weeks to reveal. "Modric," she said softly, I'm scared too. Scared that this world you come from is so far from mine. That the expectations, the family, the everything will pull you away from me." He squeezed her hand gently. "Then we face it together. I don't want to be a part of your world only when it's convenient. I want to be with you in every way, every day. But I can't do it alone, Elizabeth. I need you to choose to trust me, to choose us." Her heart beat rapidly. Could she trust him? Could she believe that this love, born from a single act of bravery, could survive the vast differences between them? Before she could respond, the lights flickered, and a hush fell over the room. A group of photographers and guests had entered a side hall, murmuring about an unexpected arrival. Elizabeth looked toward Modric, uncertainty and concern in her eyes. "I'll handle this," he said, his voice calm but firm. He guided her gently behind a curtain, shielding her from the crowd. His hand lingered on hers, steadying her, grounding her. The curtain concealed them, but Elizabeth could feel the eyes of the world pressing closer. The reality of his life, the empire, the status, the scrutiny wasn't far away. And yet, he had chosen to protect her, to bring her into his life carefully, intentionally. Her heart swelled with an emotion she had never felt before. Trust tempered by wonder, affection tempered by awe. A shadow moved near the curtain, and a familiar, elegant voice whispered her name. "Elizabeth, I see you've met Modric." She froze, realizing that someone from his world, someone powerful and influential, was observing them. The night, meant for confession and intimacy, now held an unexpected tension. Would the stranger accept their bond? Or would their love face obstacles even more daunting than their own fears? Would you trust someone who revealed their true self only after hiding it for weeks, even if it meant risking everything? Comment below, and subscribe to Philia Heart to see what happens next with Elizabeth and Modric. The next morning, Elizabeth woke to the soft glow of sunlight spilling through her apartment window. Her mind wandered immediately to Modric, the way he had looked at her last night, the gentle squeeze of his hand, the sincerity in his words. She couldn't stop replaying it, and despite the looming complications of his world, her heart ached for the moments she had shared with him. She poured herself coffee and sat by the window, thinking about the contrast between her life and his. Her world was small but tangible. Her routines, her part-time jobs, the small victories and setbacks that came with each day. Modric's world, on the other hand, was immense and intimidating, filled with wealth, responsibilities, and scrutiny. Yet, when he was with her, all of that faded. He became just a man, with fears, hopes, and a heart capable of caring deeply. Meanwhile, across town, Modric sat at his kitchen table, sketching out ideas for a new candy apple creation. He had spent the night thinking, replaying every word and expression Elizabeth had shared. He realized something profound. He didn't just want her in his life. He wanted her to feel safe, cherished, and celebrated in every way. But he also knew he couldn't overwhelm her. She needed time, space, and trust. Later that afternoon, Elizabeth found herself at the city park where Modric's candy stand had become a small fixture. She spotted him immediately, adjusting the colorful display of apples, his expression focused yet relaxed. He looked up and smiled the instant he saw her. That smile, it was a smile for her alone. "Good morning, Elizabeth," he said warmly, stepping forward. "I saved a few of the best ones for you." She smiled back, feeling the tension of the previous night begin to ease. "Thank you, Modric. I've been thinking a lot." He tilted his head, curious but patient. About everything," she admitted softly. "About you, about me, about what last night meant." Modric's expression softened. "And what did it mean?" Elizabeth hesitated, then allowed herself a small laugh. "It meant that maybe, just maybe, I could trust someone to see me as more than just a part of their world, to see me for who I really am." Modric reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was gentle, intimate without being overwhelming. "Elizabeth, I want you to know that I see you. All of you. Your strength, your humor, your kindness. And I'm not asking for you to fit into my world. I'm asking to build a world with you. Together." Her heart thumped. For the first time, she felt that extraordinary mix of safety and thrill she had only imagined in stories. She leaned slightly into him, savoring the quiet closeness. "Maxwell," she began, but then caught herself. No, she said his name as it felt right. "Modric." He smiled softly. "Yes, Modric." The air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. Elizabeth felt herself relaxing into the moment, letting go of the hesitations she had carried for weeks. The simple act of walking beside him, sharing this small space, felt monumental. They began walking through the park, talking in small bursts, sharing anecdotes about their childhoods, favorite books, and secret little habits. Elizabeth laughed more than she had in weeks. Modric felt a weight lift off his chest each time she smiled. Each time she revealed a piece of herself that was entirely hers. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting golden light across the park, they sat together on a bench overlooking the fountain. Modric pulled out a small, perfectly wrapped candy apple. "For you," he said, "a reward for surviving another long day." Elizabeth laughed, taking it gently. "I think I'm going to have to get used to this. Constant surprises and sweets." "Only the best for you," he replied. For a while, they simply sat in companionable silence, the world around them fading. Elizabeth felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in a long time. A feeling of being seen, valued, and cherished for exactly who she was. And Modric felt something just as profound. The realization that love didn't have to be complicated by wealth or status. It could be built on moments like this, quiet and genuine. But just as the moment seemed perfect, a phone buzzed sharply in Modric's pocket. He ignored it at first, not wanting to ruin the connection they were sharing. But the phone buzzed again, insistent. With a reluctant sigh, he checked the message. His expression changed. A frown creased his brow. "Elizabeth, I have to deal with something. A family matter. It shouldn't take long, but I have to go." Elizabeth's smile faltered slightly. "Is it important?" He nodded. "It is. I'll be back as soon as I can. I promise." She nodded, hiding the flicker of disappointment that threatened to cloud her newfound joy. She understood his life was far more complex than hers. But the vulnerability he had shared with her already felt like a gift, one she intended to hold close. As Modric walked away, Elizabeth turned her gaze toward the park fountain, the candy apple still in her hand. She realized that even amidst the uncertainty, she had never felt more certain of one thing: that the man who had fallen into her life by chance, by kindness, by fate, was someone she wanted to know, trust, and perhaps love. Modric returned to the city, only to discover that the family matter wasn't simple. A board member had unexpectedly scheduled a meeting, threatening to drag him back into the high-stakes corporate world he had tried to escape. Elizabeth had no idea what awaited him, and their fragile bond faced its first real test. If you were Elizabeth, would you wait patiently for someone you're falling for, even knowing their world is complicated?
Comment Bilo?
Elizabeth spent the next few days trying to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting to Modric. Every time she passed the park, she looked for his candy cart, imagining him behind it with that easy smile, unaware of the storm waiting for him in the corporate world. Meanwhile, Modric was pulled back into his old life sooner than he had hoped. The board meeting turned into a cascade of obligations. Investors questioning decisions, executives requesting updates, family pressures he had tried to leave behind. Each phone call and email reminded him of the world he had temporarily escaped, the world that had made him want to be just a simple man selling candy apples and sharing quiet moments with Elizabeth. He tried to hide his stress when he returned to the park, thinking that a brief appearance would reassure her. But as he approached, he saw her sitting alone on the bench, candy apple in hand, her expression closed and thoughtful. "Elizabeth," he said softly, approaching with a careful smile. "I'm sorry I've been." She held up a hand. "I know," she interrupted gently, but her eyes betrayed her hurt. "I saw the news." Modric's heart sank. "The news?" "Yes," she said, her voice low. "About the company, about you. I didn't realize. Modric, you're a billionaire CEO. And I thought—" She stopped, shaking her head. "I thought what we had was real. Not influenced by wealth or family obligations." The words hit him like cold rain. "Elizabeth, listen. Everything we've shared, those walks, the laughter, the candy apples, that's real. That's me. Not my title. Not my fortune. Me." She looked away, biting her lip. "But how can I know? You disappeared into your world before I even had a chance to understand it. And now I feel like I was just another distraction from all of it." Modric's chest tightened. He took a step closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "You weren't a distraction. You were the only thing that made me feel normal, happy, alive. I wanted to tell you everything, but I needed the right moment. I didn't want to overwhelm you." Elizabeth's eyes shimmered, but she still kept her distance. "The right moment? Or a moment when I wouldn't leave?" He shook his head firmly. "No, never that. I wanted you to see me as I truly am, not as a headline, not as a name, not as a fortune. I fell for you, Elizabeth. Not the wealth, not the power. You." Tears threatened to spill down her cheeks, but she blinked them away. "And yet, it feels like I've been played. Like I've been chasing a man I thought I knew, only to discover someone else entirely." Modric's hands clenched at his sides. Every instinct screamed at him to reach out, to hold her, to prove that their connection wasn't a lie. But he knew words alone weren't enough. She needed to see, feel, and experience that the man in front of her, the simple, kind, thoughtful man, was the same as the billionaire who carried the weight of an empire. "Elizabeth," he said finally, voice raw, "I can't change that I'm a CEO. I can't change the fact that responsibilities pull me away sometimes. But I can promise you this. I will never let you feel like a distraction. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up. The last thing I think about before I sleep. You are not a role I play, or a person to entertain my curiosity. You are the only person I want to build moments with, moments that matter." Her lips quivered, and for a heartbeat, it seemed she might forgive him, trust him, and step into the space he had been holding open for her. But at that precise moment, a familiar voice called from across the park. "Modric, there you are. We need you for a conference call, now." It was one of his assistants, headset in place, urgency in his tone. The intrusion was enough to shatter the fragile bubble of intimacy Elizabeth and Modric had built. Modric looked at Elizabeth, torn between duty and desire. I have to take this call. I'm so sorry." Elizabeth's face fell. "You always choose them, your world, your empire. Where do I fit?" "Modric." He opened his mouth to speak, but the assistant's repeated summons forced him to leave. walking briskly toward the edge of the park, leaving Elizabeth standing alone. Her hands tightened around the candy apple. Her chest felt hollow, as if the weight of disappointment had doubled overnight. She wanted to yell, to call after him, to demand he stay. But instead, she simply whispered to herself, "Was he ever really mine? Or just a dream I mistook for reality?" Elizabeth watched Modric disappear into the city streets, wondering if their chance at love had already slipped away. And in that instant, neither of them realized that the next meeting, one she would accidentally walk into, would change everything, forcing them to confront their feelings and the barriers between them. If you were Elizabeth, would you wait for someone you were falling for, even when their world feels too big to fit into yours? Comment below, and subscribe to Philia Heart to see if Modric and Elizabeth can overcome this challenge. Elizabeth spent the morning trying to distract herself at the little cafe she worked at, but every time she refilled a cup or wiped a counter, her thoughts drifted to Modric. She replayed their conversations, the subtle laughter they shared, the quiet gestures of kindness, the way he had handed her candy apples, or the way he had watched her when she thought no one was paying attention. She had wanted to trust him. She had wanted to believe that behind the billionaire title and the corporate world, there was a man who genuinely cared for her. And yet, the call that morning, the urgency pulling him back into his empire, had shattered that fragile hope. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the park in an hour. I need to explain everything." Modric. Her heart jumped. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Part of her wanted to run straight into his arms and demand answers. She took a deep breath, telling herself she could handle it, that she needed clarity before she could even think about forgiveness. Maxric, meanwhile, sat in the corner of the park, trying to steady his nerves. He had spent the last few days balancing board meetings, conference calls, and company obligations, but his mind had never strayed far from Elizabeth. He knew the distance, the interruptions, and the chaos of his life had hurt her. He feared he might have pushed her away forever. When he saw her approach, he rose, his heart beating faster than any business pitch ever could. She stopped a few feet away, arms crossed slightly, hesitant. "Elizabeth," he said softly, almost as if the sound of her name could anchor him. She nodded, her eyes studying him carefully. "You called me here. I'm listening." He swallowed, choosing his words carefully. "I know I've complicated things. I left, I disappeared, and I didn't explain myself. I understand if you feel betrayed." Her jaw tightened. "You didn't explain yourself. You let me believe a life that wasn't true. I did it because I wanted to protect you, from the world I come from the expectations, from the attention, from people who would never see you as I see you." He took a step closer, cautious but earnest. "I wanted you to know me first, the real me, not the billionaire everyone expects me to be." Her gaze softened, but only slightly. "And yet, I feel like I was left to figure it out on my own, like I was chasing a man who wasn't entirely there." He nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling deep inside him. "I see that now, and I am so sorry, Elizabeth. If I could undo the uncertainty, I would. But I can't change the past. I can only promise my present and my future to you, if you'll let me." She hesitated, uncertainty clouding her expression. "Modric, care about you. I do. But your world, it's so different from mine. I'm just trying to make it day by day. And I want to be part of your day-to-day," he said, voice steady, filled with quiet determination. "I want to be there when things are hard, when things are beautiful. I want to be the man who makes your life easier, who celebrates your victories and comforts you in the quiet moments. I don't want you to feel alone in your struggles ever again." Tears glimmered in her eyes. "And what about your life? Your responsibilities?" He smiled softly, a vulnerability she had rarely seen. "I can handle my responsibilities. I can balance my life. But I can't handle losing you." Her chest tightened. She had imagined this moment countless times, wondering if he would ever lay his feelings bare. And now that he had, she felt the old walls around her heart begin to crumble. "Modric," she whispered. He reached out, hesitating, giving her the space to step forward if she wanted. She did. Slowly, she closed the distance, standing before him, hands trembling slightly. I want to believe you, she said. I want to see if us can work. He nodded, relief flooding his features. That's all I ask. Just a chance. That's all I need. She smiled faintly, the tension easing from her shoulders, but she knew it wouldn't be simple. Their worlds were different, their challenges real. But for the first time she felt that maybe, just maybe, love could bridge the gap. As they stood together in the park, the first sunlight of the afternoon casting a golden glow over the benches, a city limousine slowed at the edge of the path. A figure stepped out, someone clearly important from Modric's corporate world. He looked directly at them, and his expression hinted that the corporate world wasn't done with Modric yet, and it might test the fragile bond between him and Elizabeth. If you were Elizabeth, would you take a chance on someone whose world feels so different from yours?
Comment Bilo?
The city skyline shimmered as Elizabeth and Modric walked side by side through the park, the warmth of late afternoon sun touching their faces. Their hands brushed occasionally, hesitant but full of unspoken promises. The tension from the past days, the misunderstandings, the fears, the hidden identities, had begun to dissolve, replaced by a quiet, tentative trust. Elizabeth, Modric said softly, stopping under a large oak tree. The golden light caught his hair and made his eyes sparkle. I know I've asked a lot from you. From the start I've been complicated. My world, my responsibilities, the expectations, it's never been simple. And yet, somehow you've stayed. Elizabeth's gaze softened, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Modric, you've been honest now. I see the man behind the empire and I like what I see. She paused, her fingers brushing against his. But it's not just about seeing who you are. It's about wanting to be a part of your life despite it all. He smiled, relief and joy mingling in the curve of his lips. I don't need perfection, Elizabeth. I need you. Just you. They walked further into the park, past the fountain where children laughed and couples strolled. Everything felt peaceful, ordinary, yet extraordinary because they were together. Then, from across the path, a familiar black limousine rolled to a stop. A well-dressed man stepped out, carrying a folder and an aura of urgency. Modric's assistant. The corporate world had followed him, even here. Elizabeth looked at Modric, concern flickering in her eyes. Is this your world catching up to us? He nodded, a small chuckle escaping his lips. Yes, but I've made my choice. I'll handle them. Right now, you are my priority. He stepped forward, placing his hands over hers. Elizabeth, I've realized something important over the past weeks. It's not the fortune, the titles, or the empire that matters. It's the people we care about. It's love. And I want to build that with you. No secrets, no hiding, no pretending. Her heart swelled. Every fear she had, the wealth, the differences, the complicated life, melted in that moment. She wanted this. She wanted him. She wanted them. Then let's do it, she whispered, eyes glistening with emotion. Let's figure out our life together. Modric smiled, the kind of smile that held warmth, hope, and certainty. He bent slightly and offered his hand, palm open, inviting her into a new beginning. Elizabeth placed her hand in his. A sense of safety, excitement, and joy flowed through her. Together, they walked toward the city streets, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the world could throw at them, as long as they faced it side by side. Later, Modric returned briefly to his corporate world, not for power, but to secure the stability needed for their future. Elizabeth watched him, proud and in awe. He had not abandoned his responsibilities, but he had found a balance that allowed love to flourish. They shared simple moments, coffee dates at the park, evening walks along the city streets, laughter over shared meals. Modric often surprised her with small gestures. A favorite pastry, a book he remembered she wanted, a note tucked into her coat pocket. Elizabeth noticed these things and realized it wasn't the gifts. It was the thought, the attention, the love behind every action. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Modric turned to her. Elizabeth, do you know what I've learned? She smiled softly. What? That love, real love, is worth every risk, every uncertainty. And you've shown me that. You've made me a better man just by being yourself. Tears glimmered in her eyes, but they were tears of happiness. And you've shown me that sometimes the world is bigger than we imagine. And yet, love can make it feel small and safe. He gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a tender gesture, then pressed his forehead against hers. Then let's continue this together. Always. Elizabeth leaned in, their lips meeting in a soft, lingering kiss, an affirmation of trust, choice, and the promise of love. From that day forward, their lives intertwined. Elizabeth embracing the beauty of being with someone from a world so different, and Modric embracing the warmth of a love that made him feel whole in ways money never could. The billionaire who once fled his responsibilities had found something far more valuable. A love that needed no disguise, no pretense, only truth, respect, and devotion. A gentle breeze carried the scent of autumn through the park. Just as they began walking home together, Modric's phone buzzed. A notification from his company. He glanced at it, then at Elizabeth. I'll handle this, he said softly. But right now this takes priority. Elizabeth smiled, squeezing his hand. I like priorities like that. And for once, in a city that never slept, two hearts finally found rest in each other's presence. Do you believe love can bridge worlds, even billion-dollar empires and ordinary lives? Comment Bilo? Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.